Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the nation right here, TYT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you today. Holy crap. It actually looks like a real studio again. Oh my god. Yes, we're back in a proper looking studio this time. So that's good. Sorry we missed yesterday. Of course, we had stuff that I needed to do. Unfortunately, stuff that I didn't want to do. I obviously wanted to be here yesterday, but don't worry. We got a lot of great stories to cover today on the show, including some hilarious Fox fails. Those are fun. We're going to enjoy that, including don't touch Tucker Carlson's taco. That's awesome. We also have Donald Trump's military parade. What happened to that? An incredibly odd argument over a movie with veterans. We've got wages that are stagnant and terrible. And finally, Elizabeth Warren. Fascinating. So, awesome. Okay, anyway. So, we got a lot of good stories. We'll get to that. We're going to have some fun today first before we get to disaster. So enjoy that as it lasts, or for as long as it lasts. But anyway, before we get into the show, please give us a like, give us a share. That helps the show, helps us out. Also, if you want to get in touch with the show, you can tweet the show. By using, well, I don't really have it set up to be able to see the hashtag TYT Nation yet. But what you can do is to tweet TYT Nation on Twitter with your comments, or you can use a YouTube Super Chat. So Super Chat goes to actually help the show. And so I appreciate when you guys use that because, of course, it does go to help us, keeps us going and growing. So that's one way you can support us. You can also support us through Patreon, patreon.com/TYT Nation. So that helps out a lot. Okay. Anyway, enough bullshitting around. Let's get to some fun Fox fails. Let's go. Boom. Okay. Feels like I got a lot of space here. Although I had pretty much the exact amount of space before. Yeah. Anyway, it's amazing what a lights and a nice camera will do. But anyway, let's start out with the story. So on Thursday, legendary singer Aretha Franklin passed away. Again, she was a legendary soul singer, and so because of that, she ended up getting an outpouring of support. You know, her family, as well as some touching tributes for the Queen of Soul, right? Now, all the major networks, of course, including Fox News, decided to honor the life of Aretha Franklin through a video put together showcasing her life. Now, that's great. I think that's a great tribute. Although, when it comes to Fox News, there seems to be a bit of an issue with their otherwise heartfelt coverage. Now, according to HuffPost, at around the 3:30 mark, there was an image of Franklin with the text 1942 to 2018. Transposed on that image in the upper right corner is a photo of a woman singing. Here, let me show you that image right here. Oh, look at that. Okay, Aretha Franklin. And you can see in the background, there is somebody back there singing. Well, okay. Now you think, oh, okay, what's the problem with that, right? Well, the problem is that's not actually Aretha Franklin. That's none other than still alive legendary singer Patti LaBelle. Oops. Now that photo is actually from LaBelle's 2014 performance of Over the Rainbow for then President Barack Obama. So, look, here's the thing, graphics department. That seems to be a bit of an oversight. I mean, a quick Google search would probably have helped. Like, before you, and look, I dabble in Photoshop, and so I understand that it takes a lot of work to transpose photos into other photos and to touch things up to make it. And look, it's a nice graphic. It's impressive. Problem is, you got the wrong person. Oops. As I said before, that's a bit of an oversight, and actually a very glaring oversight. Now, Fox News later apologized for this little error. They said, "We sincerely apologize to Aretha Franklin's family and friends." This is Jessica Santostefano, Fox News' vice president, media desk, said in a statement, "Our intention was to honor the icon using a secondary image of her performing with Patti LaBelle in the full-screen graphic. But the image of Miss Franklin was obscured in that process, which we deeply regret." Fascinating. Now, in response to this, social media had a little bit of a meltdown. So this is entertaining. Let's go to some tweets here. Petunia tweets in, "Why would Fox News be petty and use this pic of Aretha and add Patti LaBelle in the background?" Well, look, considering, hey, they had a little bit of a contentious history, that would seem to be a bit suspect. Now, Hugh Jassel says, "Fox News is so inept, they used a photo of Patti LaBelle in their Aretha Franklin tribute graphic." Fun. Here's another tweet from Bad Fox Graphics. This is a great one. Number one, it's understandable that Fox News would use a photo of Miss Patti LaBelle to announce Aretha Franklin's death. It sure is confusing because they're both excellent singers. Awesome. Rhiannon AF says, "It seems Fox News used an image of Patti LaBelle thinking it was Aretha Franklin. This is why the correct name for Fox News is Faux News." And Chris Strider finally says, "Because of course Fox News mixes up Aretha Franklin and Patti LaBelle." And you could make a lot of jokes, including, "Hey man, look, they kind of look alike because they're both female singers." That's it. I mean, we got them confused. We're sorry. We apologize. Now look, here's the thing, right? I'm actually more forgiving. I'm in a forgiving mood today, because when it comes to mistakes, I've made plenty on this show, and so look. To be fair, I'm also one person, so I'm like a one-man band here. But Fox News has an entire staff. So it's a little less, I guess you could be a lot less forgiving or not forgiving at all when they make a mistake like this. Because how did that get through your editors? How did that get through your graphics people? Were you just like kind of sleeping at the wheel? I guess that happens when you're Fox News. And look, maybe it was a couple of interns or something like that. I don't know, throw a picture together of Aretha Franklin. Oh, okay, tribute picture, got it. All right, oh, here, let me find one. Oops, it's Patti LaBelle. They can't get that one right. Seems like an easy thing. But look, I could criticize Fox News all day for this, and a lot of people have. But in reality, I think overall, this is a kind of a minor issue and something that you could just kind of nitpick on this one. So I'm actually, you know what? I'm going to render a verdict here. I'm going to let him go. I know. Because on this one, again, it's a small thing. I'm actually much more concerned about them lying to their audience on a consistent basis and whipping people up into fear every day. Compared to that, this is relatively minor. Am I not the most fair person on earth? Okay. I think that's, again, fair. A truly fair and balanced. Okay. Let's move on here. Tucker Carlson wants you to leave his damn taco alone. Do not touch Tucker's taco. Oh, that is bad in about 47 different ways. Now, There's a story about this. The Fox News host went on a bit of a tangent during a discussion of a Mexican restaurant in Houston. Now, this restaurant has been criticized for posting an image of Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who decided to frequent that restaurant, and said, "It is an honor for you to do so, for you to come to this restaurant. It is an honor to serve the Honorable Attorney General Jeff Sessions." Now, this restaurant, El Tiempo Cantina, had deleted its social media accounts after it received backlash for said image. Now, the restaurant owner says, "Hey man, look, they did not consult me about this. Nobody told me about it. And I wake up, I come back to this gigantic backlash that I do not want. So take it down, take it down, take it down. Not just take it down, take it all down. We're going to nuclear option this thing by scrubbing our social media accounts. Gone." Wow. So yeah, that's nuclear button, right? Now, this of course made conservatives like Tucker Carlson absolutely furious. Speaking to Univision anchor Enrique Acevedo, hopefully I got that name right, about what he believes are rules for Mexicans and what they believe they can or cannot do. Of course, that entire part of the conversation is absolutely ridiculous. You can check out the whole clip for context. But let me just pontificate on that for just a second here. In that conversation, Tucker Carlson basically is like, what is there, some sort of governing body for immigrant behavior, like that tells Mexicans what they can and can't do? No, that's ridiculous. No, look, totally ridiculous idea. But what is more ridiculous is actually what Tucker Carlson says next. Take a look.
Totally opposed to illegal immigration. I think that our legal immigration level should be lower because the country's getting too volatile. Those are my sincere views. I also like Mexican food since I grew up on the Mexican border. Should I be allowed to eat Mexican food?
No, no. You know, this is, I think, what people are pointing out, the contradiction of attacking someone's culture, someone's story, and then celebrating their food and celebrating
their food? It's American
what they find convenient to celebrate about their story.
What, you think you own tacos now or something? I love this. It's so crazy.
No one does, by the way.
Oh, really? Because it sounds like you feel like you own tacos. No. I feel like I do. I feel like they're an American food, and I'm going to keep eating them, even though I agree with Jeff Sessions.
I'm glad you do. No, and I think everyone should. Tacos, guacamole, and we should all celebrate each other's cultures. We feed off each other. It's what makes us
each other's cultures. It's an American
diverse
food.
and stronger.
It's an American
feeding
food.
off each other's cultures, borrowing from each other's cultures, learning from each other's cultures.
I'm from San Diego, man. Those are my tacos. Mine.
Again, there's a good chance that he's just, I don't know, trying to be facetious here. But really? My tacos, man. Don't you dare touch my tacos. Don't you appropriate my culture. Wait. When did Tucker Carlson Americanize tacos? I wasn't aware of that. If so, I would have to thank Tucker Carlson because I love tacos. I love tacos. I like tacos. That's what it is. I wasn't aware that he owned all of tacos in America. Ridiculous segment, right? But we're having fun here. But seriously, it does kind of show you the mindset of people like that. Because when you think about it, what we've done here in America is we take things from other cultures, right? And we tweak it. We've done that with all sorts of different foods. And then there are some people out there that say, oh, see, I made that. That's mine. That's mine now. I get the credit. No, you didn't come up with the original idea. Yes, you did make it, in some respects, better. Although that, of course, depends on taste, right? Now, here's the thing. Again, I love tacos. I love Americanized tacos. But I actually love authentic Mexican tacos as well. And let me tell you, those are actually better. I would much rather eat at an authentic Mexican restaurant or have authentic Mexican food than what we have is Americanized. Like, I go to Taco Bell. Again, I like tacos. But let's be honest about that. Anybody who thinks that's authentic gourmet Mexican food is out of their mind. Ridiculous, right? So, but anyway, what it boils down to is here's Tucker Carlson taking what is an actual issue, immigration, and of course Sessions celebrating another culture's food while simultaneously attempting to ban people from that culture from coming into America, it's a bit hypocritical. Just a bit, right? And of course, Carlson gets around it by doing the white right-winger thing and saying, no, 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 it's not yours, it's actually mine, since we made a little bit of changes to it. And how dare you try to appropriate it? Fun. So, but when you think about it and put it into historical context, white people have kind of been doing that for a lot of years, since at least the 1500s. And I'm not saying we're doing it now, with the exception of Jeff Sessions and Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump, right? On the one hand, we celebrate their food. We celebrate some of their holidays, for example, Cinco de Mayo. Of course, unfortunately, you've got people that use that holiday as an excuse to put on a sombrero and just drink and get shit-faced drunk. But that's not the point of the holiday. Nonetheless, who is it that you see out there doing that? White people. And on the other hand, while we do these things, right, you've got people like Ann Coulter that look at that same culture and say, peasant culture, peasants. They should not be allowed in the United States to bring their terrible culture. So, but here's the thing about that, right? I actually love how we borrow from things from other cultures and we kind of make them our own a little bit. I actually celebrate that. Now, usually the way that we do that is by adding cheese to a whole bunch of it when it comes to food. And that's great. I love cheese. But maybe what we should do is, maybe we should also honor those cultures where we get those ideas. And look, we need to understand also that without immigration and other people coming in and bringing in their culture, we wouldn't have the type of America that we have today. Again, America is a mashup of many different places and peoples and cultures, and it's basically a melting pot. Immigration is really core to who we are as Americans. There wouldn't be any American culture, which again is a mishmash of lots of other cultures and traditions together. We wouldn't have that. And let me go back to what he said too. Right at first, right? I'm against illegal immigration completely. Well, of course, we know that. But he also says, I'm also against, or I'm for limiting legal immigration because of the volatility, right? That volatility, basically he's blaming immigrants for the volatility. When really it wouldn't be a problem if you didn't have some racist right-wingers that are saying, no, we want to limit legal immigration. Again, not even talking about the issue of illegal immigration, but talking about legal immigration, which the Trump administration, especially Stephen Miller, has looked to block. We want less people coming here from certain areas. Now, what they actually do want when it comes to immigration and why they limit it is they really want rich people to come over here and pay $500,000 for their visa, right? They want to buy that golden ticket into the United States. That's the kind of people they want over here. They want wealthy people, not people who are poor, people who are looking for opportunity, and people that could become the next Steve Jobs, or people that could become the next, Sergey Brin, which created these gigantic companies. They don't want those people. They want people who have already made it, people who are already rich. Now, again, I have to preface, not all conservatives are racist, but you have a lot of racist conservatives. And so that includes Donald Trump, Tucker Carlson, and Jeff Sessions. Okay. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. We're going to take a quick break here. We'll come back. We got Donald Trump's military parade. We got then we got Apocalypse Now. I kid you not. This is a kind of a messed up / hilarious story. So you're not going to want to miss that. One of my favorite stories of the day. Elizabeth Warren, much more. We'll come back. Everybody use the super chat. Send us a message. tweet us, all that stuff, and we'll come back. We'll read those as soon as we get back from the break. Around the Nation. Everybody, welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here, TWT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. No messages or super chats. Sad. So let's keep going. Let's get into Trump's military parade. All right. So reality has finally reigned on Donald Trump's military parade, as the estimated cost has forced the president to cancel that event. Now, the parade, of course, which at one point was estimated only to cost about $12 million. That's official White House figures saying, oh, yeah, this was Stephen Mnuchin, Treasury Secretary, saying it'll cost somewhere between $12 to $30 million, and give or take a few million. Turns out, no, it's actually going to cost a lot more than that. Turns out about $80 million more. Wow. Now, how did that happen? Well, it turns out that that $92 million cost estimate included security, transportation, parade assets, transportation of parade assets, aircraft, as well as temporary duty for troops. Now, this is according to the Department of Defense. So they came up with these figures, and they're like, it's going to be about $90 million. And according to a U.S. defense official who was unnamed, those plans included approximately 8 tanks, as well as other armored vehicles, including Bradley Strykers and M113s. Now, of course, instead of Donald Trump saying, no, we're going to still do it, even though it's a little pricey, it's worth it. It's worth it. That's what we're going to do. No, he decides to tweet this. The local politicians who run D.C. poorly know a windfall when they see it. When asked to give us a price for holding a great celebratory military parade, they wanted a number so ridiculously high that I canceled it. Never let someone hold you up. I will instead attend the big parade already scheduled at Andrews Air Force Base on a different date and go to the Paris parade, celebrating the end of the war on November 11th. Maybe we will do something next year in D.C. when the cost comes way down. Now we can buy some more jet fighters. Well, leave it to Donald Trump to find the apparent silver lining in that, which is buying more costly, wasteful jet fighters that we don't actually fucking need. Oh, by the way, the F-35 cost $94 million. Oops. You can almost buy one with the cost of the parade. You're just $2 million shy, dude. Or, you know, what you could do, actually, instead of buying a jet with the money that you'll save, maybe you should actually fix Flint's water so that they no longer drink poison water. That would be great. But, of course, Flint, a lot of black people there, doesn't really care about that. I detect a slight hint of bitterness in those tweets, by the way, because, look, here's what Trump wants to do. He wanted this parade so that he can basically have a giant penis-stroking show of force. He thinks it makes him look strong. He saw Kim Jong-un do it. And he's like, oh, Kim Jong-un, so strong. So strong, I want to be like him and have a military parade that shows off my big, giant phallic missiles. It's incredibly transparent. We know what this is about. But not only is it transparent, but the entire idea of a military parade is absolutely wasteful. And look, back to the DC politicians, right? Because that's who he blames. Of course, it's not his fault for, you know, planning a gigantically expensive military parade. Which, by the way, that $92 million, that's an estimate based on what the kind of parameters Donald Trump himself set. I want this, and I want this, and I want these vehicles, I want tanks and everything. Okay, well, if you want to get that, then you're going to have to pay quite a bit of money. It's going to cost a lot. Because, again, you've got all these logistics, and you've got to shift resources, et cetera, right? So there's that. Instead of that, of course, he blames DC's mayor. Now, DC's mayor is a Democrat. Now, she decided that she wanted to weigh in, and her name is Muriel Bowser. Now, she tweets in, yep, I'm Muriel Bowser, mayor of Washington, D.C., the local politician who finally got through to the reality star in the White House with the realities, $21.6 million, of parades, events, demonstrations in Trump's America. Sad. Now, what does that $21.6 million refer to? I don't know. In fact, nobody knows, except for Muriel Bowser. And so far, efforts to reach out to her to explain that part have gone unanswered. But to me, that doesn't really matter. So here's the thing. No matter how much it costs, $12 million, $30 million, $21.6 million, $90 million, it's a waste. It's not only a waste of time, it's a waste of money. Now, money that could actually be used to help, I don't know, maybe the veterans. I mean, that would be great. The VA needs a lot of help. It needs to be properly funded. You also have, again, that costs the military parade, even at the 12 million figure, I think could have been used to replace all the water pipes in Flint. It's not just those different things, right? There's actually a ton of better places, better uses for that money than just spending it on Donald Trump's incredibly fragile, childish ego. Maybe we should do that instead. Just saying. Okay. Anyway, speaking of veterans, let's move on here. Because we got a crazy veteran story for you guys. And you're going to love this. So if you know anything about Donald Trump, you know that he loves the troops, man. He's going to take care of the troops. In fact, he promised during the election, I'm going to take care of you guys. I'm going to take care of you guys. That is, unless he's fighting with them over a ridiculous movie. Now, the Daily Beast had a fascinating write-up of a time before Omarosa was enemy number 2 of the White House. Enemy number 1, of course, is Robert Mueller. Now, it started with veterans groups being angry about Manigault, Newman, being put in charge of veterans issues for the White House. Again, all these promises during the election of being able to take care of the veterans and all the problems facing vets today, especially with the VA and all that stuff. So Donald Trump's like, I don't know, Omarosa, go do that. But Omarosa doesn't know anything about the military. She's not a member of the military. She's not a veteran. Why would you put her in charge? It's because she got some backlash, or it's because the president was being criticized. And after Manigault Newman got put in charge, they also got criticized. So like, oh my God, okay, we gotta do something. We gotta figure something out. Here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna meet with the veterans, right? So Trump, accompanied by Manigault Newman, decided to meet with principals from various vets organizations in the Roosevelt Room in March 17th of 2017. Now, new details of that meeting that were not previously released have been released by the Daily Beast, and it is awesome. Now, the meeting, they write, included President Trump and the envoys of nearly a dozen major vets groups, including the American Legion, Vietnam Veterans of America, American Veterans, Veterans of Foreign Wars, and the right-leaning Concerned Veterans for America, as well as senior staffers such as Stephen Miller, Kellyanne Conway, Sean Spicer, and Manigault Newman surrounding the large table. So it's basically a round table, okay? Now, that's not a bad thing. In fact, I think things like this are actually really smart. Do round tables, listen to people, address their concerns. That's what a good president will do. But as you're going to see, this devolves very, very quickly. Now, first, they write that the president began going around the room asking different representatives what they are working on and how his administration can help, having made veterans issues a cornerstone of his 2016 campaign rhetoric. Again, if it stayed that way, this would have been absolutely fine. This would have been great. But of course, this is Donald Trump, so things are about to get weird. In fact, one attendee told the Daily Beast that, quote, it was really fucking weird. So, anyway, what he did is that he went around the table and eventually got to Rick Weidman. Now, Rick Weidman is the co-founder of Vietnam Veterans of America. Now, he was one of the Vietnam vets in the room that day, having served a tour of duty in 1969 as a combat medic. Now, look, you guys know Donald Trump has a bit of a checkered history when it comes to Vietnam. He did, after all, earn the nickname Captain Bone Spurs, you know, for not actually going to Vietnam. Oh, no, I've got bone spurs in my feet. Which one? Which foot has the bone spur? I don't know. Maybe both of them. I forgot. And then, of course, his daddy came in, got him deferments for school, etc., etc. So he didn't go. He didn't go. Now, he got himself into more trouble as well when he said, he basically said, oh yeah, I sleep with so many women that, you know, I got to watch out for STDs. And that was my personal Vietnam. Oh, wonderful. So great history on that. Now, back to the meeting. According to two sources in the room who requested anonymity, this is when things went decidedly off the rails. Quote, during an exercise of the meeting, Weidman brought up the issue of Agent Orange, an extremely notorious component of the U.S. herbicidal warfare on Vietnam. Weidman was imploring the president and his team to permit access to benefits for a broader number of vets who said they were poisoned by Agent Orange. This is a very actual, is actually a very important issue. It concerns veterans' health care. All right. Now, how did Donald Trump respond? Quote, that's taken care of. What do you mean that's taken care of? What has the administration actually done? Like, what have you done to help veterans who say that they've been poisoned by Agent Orange? By our own, like, again, that's by our own military members dropping that on our troops on Vietnam and them getting exposed to it. What have you actually done? Well, nothing. As the attendees began explaining to the president that the VA has not made nearly enough progress in the issue or any progress at all. To which Trump responded by abruptly derailing the meeting and asking the attendees if Agent Orange was, quote, that stuff from that movie. And here we go. Now, the Daily Beast notes that he did not initially name the film that he was referencing, but it quickly became clear as Trump kept rambling that he was referring to the classic 1979 Francis Ford Coppola epic, Apocalypse Now. And specifically, the famous helicopter attack scene set to Ride of the Valkyries. Oh my God. What a child. Source present at the time tells the Daily Beast that multiple people, including Vietnam War veterans, chimed in to inform the president that the Apocalypse Now set piece he was talking about showcased the U.S. military using napalm, not Agent Orange. Now, look, that's not a thing that you can easily confuse. Napalm is basically liquid fire. Not the same as Agent Orange. Agent Orange, as I said before, is an herbicide. So basically, he was trying to remove the jungle cover that the Viet Cong used to conceal themselves during the war so that our troops could actually find them better. Because they were actually really good at being able to hide and do ambush attacks on our soldiers. Now, nonetheless, Donald Trump, when confronted with these facts, do you think he said, yeah, you know what, you guys, you're right, I was wrong, it's not actually, you're right, napalm, that's what it has nothing to do with the movie Apocalypse Now. No. Donald Trump says, you're wrong. Quote, Trump refused to accept that he was mistaken and proceeded to say things like, no, I think it's that stuff from that movie. One clue belying the president's insistence is the famous Robert Duvall line from the scene in Apocalypse Now that said, quote, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Right? That's what he said. Not, I love the smell of Agent Orange in the morning. Completely different. Even I know that quote. Now, the insanity, of course, continues. Listen to this. He then went around the room polling attendees about if it was, in fact, napalm or Agent Orange in the famous scene from that movie, as the gathering, organized to focus on important, sometimes life-or-death issues for veterans, descended into a pointless debate over Apocalypse Now that the president simply would not concede despite all available evidence. That right there, I think, is the essence of Donald Trump. People arguing with facts, saying, no, Mr. President, with all due respect, you're simply incorrect. And him saying, no, I am not wrong. I am totally right. It is that. It's the same thing. It's the Agent Orange and not napalm. So what happened? Finally, Trump made eye contact again with Weidman and asked him if it was napalm or Agent Orange. Finally, we're getting to the meat of the issue here, right? Or actually not. But we're getting to a final resolution on this. Now, the VVA co-founder assured Trump, as did several before him, that it was in fact napalm, and said that he didn't like the Coppola film and believed it to be a disservice to Vietnam War veterans. Well, according to two people in attendance, Trump, after getting that answer, still did not accept it. He then flippantly replied to the Vietnam vet, "Well, I think you just didn't like the movie," before finally moving on. He just said that he didn't like the movie. He told Trump, "I don't like that movie. I think it's a disservice." And then Trump says, "I just think you didn't like the movie." Not saying that, yes, okay, I got it wrong. Okay, I believe you now. I was mistaken. He can't even say that. He can't say it at all. The words "I was wrong," he is incapable of saying, even though it's blatantly obvious that he is absolutely wrong. That's amazing. Holy shit. Oh my God, can you imagine this guy in diplomacy? Oh Jesus. Oh my God. Oh, we have a child. There's more. The debate over Apocalypse Now in the Roosevelt Room lasted at least 2 minutes, according to estimates from those who endured it. And as a result, because they sat there and argued about this movie, the president was not able to call on everyone at the round table, in part due to these tangents. Tangents! There was more than one. This happened more than once. Oh, for Christ's sakes, man. Reach for comment Wednesday. Weidman told the Daily Beast that he does, quote, hate that movie. And while he did not go into specifics of this part of the meeting, he did confirm that Trump, quote, said something where it was clear he was confused by napalm and Agent Orange. Good Lord, man, not only is he dumb, but super, super stubborn. Again, it's just like, it's like the Sixth Sense in here, right? Except instead of being dead, you're just dumb and you don't know you're dumb. He doesn't know he's dumb. Or maybe he does and he's like, no, I refuse to concede that I'm an idiot. Somebody who doesn't accept facts, despite overwhelming evidence, should not have a position of power. And of course, if we ran by that metric, most of the Republican Party would not be in power. And yet, strangely enough, they are. But we live in a world where somebody like Jim Inhofe can bring a snowball into the Senate, into the chamber, and be like, climate change, not real. Snowball. Take that, libs. Checkmate. And he doesn't lose election. He wins re-election. Every time. Holy hell, man. These people, man. Idiot. Man-child. God Lord. When it comes to Trump, how can they work with this guy? How can he work with this guy? I don't understand. No matter what you show him, he's not going to budge. And I said before, interestingly enough, it goes back to what I'd been saying all along. He is the Fox News president. You know why I say that? Not only because he parrots Fox News talking points and he retweets Fox News hosts, but actually he is the perfect example of what somebody who is programmed like by Fox News actually does. Rejects all facts, all evidence outside of what he already believes. That's exactly what Fox News trains their audience to do. And so, look, what they are doing, Fox News, is obviously incredibly dangerous. And we're seeing the fruits of that. So to think that it won't backfire on Fox News one day, well, we'll see. We'll see. Jesus, man. All right. Let's move forward, man. That's not sad. We've got more sad news. Okay. Now, President Trump has been doing a lot of bragging about the job numbers. Hey, look, we've got a low unemployment rate, 3.94%. And yes, it is historically low. Congratulations. Now, in reality, of course, it's been declining for quite some time. In fact, we've had 93 to 94, I believe, solid months of job growth. Now, that means, of course, it extends all the way back into the Obama presidency. Now, one, of course, problem with that is that even under Obama, we had stagnant wages. Wage growth was not keeping up with inflation, and that is still true under President Trump. Now, here's the thing, right? So, look, I've talked about how the unemployment rate doesn't tell the whole story, and I was saying that even during the Obama administration, when Obama was touting the job numbers. For one, the unemployment rate doesn't include people who are underemployed, nor does it include the types of jobs that were created and how much they actually pay. So, if you have a good job numbers, but all those jobs are basically minimum wage, service sector, fast food jobs, well, then that's not really an accurate count of the economy, right? Now, what's different about this is that, yes, we had those numbers under Obama. Then again, Obama had a Congress since 2010 that didn't allow him to do anything to help stimulate the economy. They couldn't pass a minimum wage increase, which, of course, Barack Obama said, okay, let's go to $10 an hour. Okay, now let's go to $12 an hour. And the Republicans wouldn't let him do anything like that. So that's some context there, and that's to be fair to President Obama, who I don't think, when he had the ability to do more, didn't. So he chose not to. Now, the difference is here with Trump is that Donald Trump just passed a gigantic tax cut bill, which, of course, is costing us $1.9 trillion, in which 83% went to the very wealthy. But he promised it. No, this is a middle-class tax cut, which is, again, incorrect. 83% went to the rich, as I just mentioned. But this will help raise your wages. Not only will it create jobs, you'll actually get more money, too. You'll save money in your paycheck, which is effectively a wage gain, which actually technically is not, because they're not actually paying you anymore. But it's going to help all that stuff. It's going to make the economy tremendous and fantastic. Now, did that happen? No. I think it's fairly obvious that it did not happen. But Pew Research did a study on it anyway. Just to add to the plethora of other studies that have shown that we have had no wage growth, even after the promise of gigantic tax cuts. Now, the details of this are actually pretty stark. Now, according to that study by Pew Research, the real average wage, which Pew defines as the wage after accounting for inflation, has now roughly the same purchasing power as it did 40 years ago. Well, that's disastrous. While it's noted in the report that some workers have seen gains, most of the increases have gone to those who were already the highest paid. So, just like the tax cuts, you had the majority of the benefit going to a very few amount of people. The people who actually don't need it, and skipping the people that actually need it the most. Now, here's more details, courtesy of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They found that average hourly wages for non-management private sector workers were about equal to $22.65 in July. That is up 2.7% from a year earlier. Now, inflation, as I mentioned before in other segments, is up 2.8%, so that basically wipes out any wage gains. It has been eaten by inflation. Now, that is actually in line with general patterns over the past 5 years, when wage growth has been between 2% and 3% annually. Now, again, I mentioned that happened during the Obama administration, and as Obama, when he had power, didn't really do anything to address it, and then post-2010, where even if he wanted to do something to address it, Congress would not allow him to do so because they were controlled by Republicans. You had a Republican House for quite some time, which would not take up any bills on addressing income inequality or, raising the minimum wage. So, again, I got to give important context to these facts. Now, despite this growth, is despite Trump's tax cuts and the tariffs that were supposed to help American workers, but in fact, they have done little to help American workers. And in fact, the tariffs themselves are actually poised to hurt American workers. Now, on wages, let me give you some stats on that. In the 1970s and early 1980s, when inflation was high, average wages actually jumped way more. They jumped 7, 8, or even 9% year over year. So that's 1970s, 1980s. Yes, high inflation, but wages actually outpaced inflation, which is not what we see now. In fact, according to Pew's Drew DeSilver, after adjusting for inflation, today's average hourly wage has just about the same purchasing power it did in 1978, following a long slide in the 1980s and early 1990s and bumpy, inconsistent growth since then. In fact, in real terms, average hourly earnings peaked more than 45 years ago. 45 years. I haven't been alive for 45 years. So in my entire lifetime, I have not seen high wages. We as a nation, working people, have not seen high wages. It peaked before I was born. Jeez, man. The $4.03 an hour rate recorded in January of 1973 had the same purchasing power that $23.68 would have today. And that, of course, is absolutely disastrous. Now, what happened back in the 70s and 80s? Oh, right. In the 80s, Ronald Reagan broke the unions. And before that, the Supreme Court opened up big corporate money in politics thanks to Nixon. So it's not a surprise that when you see gigantic donations from large corporations, corporate entities, coming in and flooding into our politics, that you see a correlation with wages becoming stagnant. It's what we like to call the Great Divergence, and brings me to, of course, one of the best graphs here that we have. So let me go to that. Great Divergence. So here you have in the early 70s, productivity and wages, hourly compensation breaking, right? Before that, they were right in line. The more productive you are, the more that you end up getting paid. But then you had that split where you had productivity continuing to rise at the same pace as it was before, but wages have flatlined. And of course, there is a reason for that. If this is not an accident, this was on purpose. More corporate money in politics and less union power has created this situation. Now, it turns out that real wages among the lowest paid quarter of workers have increased by just 4.3% since 2000, making the lowest quarter of working class Americans worse off, while the top tenth of earners have seen an increase of 15.7%, that's about $2,112 a week, compared to an increase of just $26 each week for the bottom 10%. $2,112 a week in your paycheck compared to $26. And of course, all of this in the same time period, you have, according to Bloomberg, the cost of college, tuitions and fees increasing by 1,120%. Wage growth of 4.3% in that time. And in the same time, college costs skyrocket. But it's not just that. You also have increased housing costs. You have an increase in the cost of gas. You have an increase in the cost of food. You have a massive increase in the cost of health care. This means, basically, that you have an entire population of people, the 90%, that can't actually afford to live in America. Can't afford to live without government help, food stamps, Medicaid, and you have these corporations that exploit that. that tell their workers, no, we're not gonna pay you more. We're just gonna direct you towards the nearest welfare office to go sign up for food stamps and Medicaid. That is in effect a subsidy to these employers, the McDonald's, the Walmart. I remember when McDonald's released their chart on how to budget. They included a second job, no heat, and incredibly affordable insurance. Insurance at a price that most people cannot get. And of course, if you have a pre-existing condition, or of course, if you have family, well, then you're essentially screwed. We live in a country that we cannot afford to actually live in. So how have we been getting by? Credit. The availability of cheap credit, which turns out to not be cheap after all. So yet when you have a credit crisis, and you have a credit bubble, and then you have a student loan bubble, because again, 1,120% increase in college costs. That correlates now with an increase in student loan borrowing, which also correlates with an increase in default rates and student loan debt, which now is in a gigantic bubble that is ready to burst at any point in time. And it could take the entire market down with it. We live in a country where we can't afford to do basic things like get healthcare and get an education. That is a goddamn travesty. These numbers are absolutely disastrous, but this is a reality for so many millions of people, millions of Americans. So, look, here's what we need to do, right? The thing is, we can't live in America. We can't live the American dream, right? But the current administration's solution to this is to shovel more money towards rich people. That's their entire plan. In fact, that was the plan from the outset. All the way back under Nixon. The whole purpose was to make it so that we now, as a country, service rich people. And all the benefits flow to the top. We need to reverse that. Now, how do we do that? Well, maybe we should actually tax rich people. I know, right? Tax them fairly. And use that money, we redistribute that money to the poor and the middle class. The way that the rest of the modern world does. And by that, I mean through things like tuition free at college, right? So public education needs to be tuition free. Another way they do it, through single payer healthcare, where everybody gets covered regardless of how much you make. You are covered, no copays, no deductibles. Another way, higher minimum wage. So all that would definitely help to alleviate this income gap and actually would raise wages past inflation and actually make it so that people can survive. Because as this article notes, despite a few job categories where employers have been compelled by a tight labor market to nudge wages up a little bit, and they barely have. Now, I know some of you might bring up, but did people got bonuses? Some people got bonuses, and actually that basically doesn't amount to a whole lot. And as far as the tax cuts are concerned, look, when you have Paul Ryan out there, Speaker of the House, retweeting a woman who gets an extra $1.50 on her check every week and saying that that's the success of the tax cuts, that's the extent of what we see, well, that is a failure of the system, an absolute disgusting failure. But they say, they continue, this period of low unemployment has yet to improve the situation of average workers from where it was when President Ford was in the White House. Again, that unfortunately is by design. You would think with this low unemployment, they always tell you, oh, no, the labor market, see, when the labor market is full of surplus workers and, you know, we don't really have that much demand, of course wages are going to fall a little bit. They're going to stay low because, look, employers have basically their choice, right? Well, now that situation has changed. But wages still won't rise. They're not going to do it on their own. These corporations, the market is not going to fix itself. It's not going to regulate itself, okay? They're not going to choose out of the kindness of their hearts to raise wages significantly. No. What they're going to do is that they're going to take extra money. And this explains why, of course, Wall Street is doing fantastic. It's not because the businesses are doing better. It's not because they're having more demand and hiring more people. No, it's because they've been artificially inflating their own stock. They take the money from the tax cuts and they buy back their own stock and they create a bubble where they actually are not worth more. But then what happens? Well, these companies, these executives cash out because their stock is worth more and they make millions. They make millions. That's what's happening in this economy. It's a fake. It's a false economy. And it's only working for people who are wealthy. That's the reality of the situation. And here's yet another study pointing that out. Is it time for the pitchforks yet? We'll see. We'll see. Okay. Let me give you one more story here. We're going long, everybody. Okay. You know what? Actually, before we do that, we're going to come back, or we're going to go to a break. We'll come back here with this next story here. You're not going to want to miss this. This is Elizabeth Warren and the war in Yemen. So very important stuff. But please leave your super chats. We'll read them. I got a bunch of them to read when we come back from the break. And make sure to tweet us at TYT Nation on Twitter. So we'll be right back. Stay here. Round the Nation. Everybody, welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here, TOT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you today. So, let me read some super chats. You guys have been weighing in. So very heady questions here. First, Platypie sends a super chat and says, this should be the minimum wage, $20. I agree. Yeah. So $15 is like the minimum. But actually, if we talked about how much people need to live on when it comes to an actual good living wage, it's somewhere like $23 at least. So, yeah, I agree with that sentiment. Thanks, Platypi, for sending in that money and supporting the show. That's one of the ways that you can support TYT Nation. Other ways, of course, you can like and share the stream. And also, you can become a patron, patreon.com/TYT Nation. Okay, moving on. Rexel just simply says, Jeff, what? No, I know what's in reference to, of course. Hey, it's good to be back on this Friday. So we'll be going back to regular shows. So I'm excited. Well, unfortunately, we still have a couple of days where I will not be able to be here. That's, of course, Monday and Wednesday. Tentative Wednesday. Not sure if we won't be here on Wednesday, so I'll keep you guys updated on that. But afterwards, should be smooth sailing to get back to a normal, regular schedule. All right. Now, let's get into the controversy here. Coffee Crow asks, how do I feel about the Alex Jones situation? He says, I'm not a fan of it. On one hand, he's a moron, and some of his rhetoric was tantamount to incitement. But on the other hand, it's not just Alex getting hit. People who simply talked about the issue also got slapped with bans, channel strikes. I don't know, man. It just seems like a tricky issue. If Alex's speech was actually incitement, then I can understand. But why the other bans? The internet is losing character. So this is a complicated issue. Okay. So you guys, I did a video on this the day that it happened. My like to dislike ratio was insane. I had never seen that. So there was a lot of people that disagreed with me, but I'm sort of in the, and this is also something strange to say, but I'm actually more in the Kyle Kulinski secular talk, Jimmy Dore, camp, sort of, right? So I'm like half in, I'm half out. So let me explain my position on that, because again, this is a very nuanced issue. And a very difficult issue. Okay, so now you obviously have an issue here with corporations, private corporations doing whatever they want. Now Jimmy Dore argues that since they are such big platforms, they should be nationalized or broken up. I actually agree with that position because I think they have gotten to the point where yes, they are working with the government. So the government is in bed with Facebook, with Google, all these platforms. So they do have a lot of control, and maybe you could tie that into a free speech issue. But they haven't done that. So since they're not publicly regulated utilities, and yes, I agree that they should be, they still have the, under current rules, have the ability to ban whoever they want from their platform. Now, the other thing is that I agree with other people like Ben Dixon, is that they did, they earned that ban. So they would dox people from Sandy Hook. There are people that got arrested for stalking Sandy Hook parents because there is incitement here. So incitement, not hate speech, because even though hate speech, a lot of people say, oh, hate speech should be regulated. I actually don't agree with that. I think the only way to counter hate speech is with good speech, right? So that qualifies as bad speech versus good speech, okay? And so, but when it comes to incitement to violence, that is where I believe you should be able to draw a line. It's almost like yelling fire in a crowded theater, right? You can't do that because people are going to get hurt. And what Alex Jones was doing, people are getting hurt. But at the same time, here you have Kyle Kulinski and Jimmy Dore and Matt Taibbi rightly pointing out that, okay, but here we have left-wing sites getting banned as well. Now, understand that was happening beforehand, and that was always a huge concern. You have people being deplatformed before. You have people being hit with copyright strikes, Adpocalypse, which happened to us. People being put on blacklists, that's secular talk. So you had this stuff happening before as well. And there wasn't enough attention being paid to it. Now, we paid attention to it Secular Talk paid attention to it. All these different platforms did pay attention to it. So the concern, though, after Jones is that they ramp it up, and they ramp it up based on whether or not you agree with the establishment news sources or not, right? And you're actually going against the establishment line, right? And so that's where the concern comes from. So I see where the concern is. I actually have that concern. I've had that concern before. This isn't about Alex Jones. And so I think personally, I guess to get around to your question, because there's so much context and so much gray area surrounding this, what Alex Jones did was wrong. And even if Facebook were a public utility and you had free speech rights, you still can't incite violence. So yes, you should get punished for that and get a ban, maybe even a temporary ban, right? And then they can come back. Because, again, incitement to violence is not actually free speech. So that's got to be punished. That is unacceptable. Conspiracy theories, that is free speech. Coming up with ridiculous things, that's free speech. Libel, not free speech. So that's also, and you could say that he engaged in libel towards others, right? So that's also unacceptable. So, look, again, I actually do think that the decision to punish Jones is actually not a bad decision, but I worry of what it's leading to. And I know there's a lot of people that argue, but yeah, guys, you're not doing the same kind of stuff that Jones was doing. You're not inciting violence, so you don't have anything to worry about. But understand that the attack on independent media has been going on for quite some time before Alex Jones. And that's what we're trying to warn people about. That's what we've been warning people about for a long time. Why should Mark Zuckerberg decide what is not free speech? Again, this has nothing to do with incitement. If you're doing incitement to violence, then you should be absolutely banned. But on other things, why would we make a CEO of a big corporation the arbiter? And so it just brings up that question. It brings up that concern. Okay. And so what we have here, unfortunately, is we have, and by the way, there is government officials telling people to ban people on Facebook and Twitter, social media. That I think is unacceptable. That I think when you get the government involved, then that does become a free speech issue. So again, this is wildly complicated. My issue is my opinion on this issue is incredibly nuanced, and I know there are people that are going to disagree who think it's more cut and dry. I don't, and so we can agree to disagree on that. But again, it is very, very nuanced, and so I mean, look, maybe we're just saying, hey, look, guys, maybe we're worrying too much about it. Then again, with media consolidation, I don't think we're worrying enough about that. And so, I mean, obviously we have to do something about that. And we have to make sure that left-wing outlets do not suffer the same fate for questioning the establishment. And I worry that is something that might happen, regardless of the Alex Jones situation. And so that's my concern. So, anyway. So that's all for Super Chats. Thank you for sending those in and supporting the show. Okay, anyway. Let's go into the final story here. Let's talk about Elizabeth Warren. This is a story actually media doesn't want people to talk about. Speaking of that. Okay. Senator Elizabeth Warren is now demanding answers when it comes to America's role in the Saudi-led bombing of Yemen. Now, according to The Intercept, which did a great article on this and have been following the conflict in Yemen for quite some time, earlier this week, Warren had sent a letter to General Joseph Votel, head of U.S. Central Command and top commander for the U.S. forces in the Middle East. Now, in this letter, she requested that he clarify some of his past congressional testimony about the United States' role in the ongoing Yemen war, which really it seems to be more of a massacre than anything else, as millions of Yemenis are dying and millions more are literally right now starving to death. Now, Warren's letter actually referenced an earlier article by The Intercept about an airstrike that happened back in May. Now, that's based on a U.S. intelligence report that recounts in detail, minute by minute, how the strike had unfolded and American munitions were used. So what happens is that we sell weapons to pretty much everybody. We sell weapons to Saudi Arabia. Now, I don't know if we give them at a discount or anything like that, but we do sell weapons to Saudi Arabia. And guess what? Saudi Arabia uses those weapons on Yemenis. So it doesn't matter if they're innocent people. And in fact, a lot of innocent people have been unfortunately killed by these weapons. Now, Votel, however, had previously suggested, and this is what Warren was asking about, to clarify that the U.S. actually had no knowledge or very little knowledge about how the Saudi Arabian government and the UAE ended up using American weapons. And they say, no, we don't track the aircraft missions that we help refuel. We just refuel them. All we're doing is we're doing strategic support when it comes to refueling Saudi aircraft and then selling them weapons that they probably don't use or that we are not sure if they use on civilians in Yemen. Now that, of course, is bullshit. It doesn't pass the smell test. So, of course, Warren asks about that. But before we go to that, let me go to Warren before. During a congressional hearing in March, Warren asked Votel whether CENTCOM tracks what aircraft do after the United States refuels them. His answer is, quote, "Senator, we do not." Votel also denied knowing whether U.S.-produced munitions were used in specific strikes when the media has reported on civilian deaths. Now, that article earlier this month by The Intercept published a detailed article about a coalition airstrike back in May, which targeted a site in Yemen's northern Sadr governorate where a dozen family members were sleeping in tents. Now, the bomb missed, so the civilians survived. If the bomb had not missed, then you would have had an entire family slaughtered. These are innocent people, right? Now, the article in question quoted an intelligence report that includes what appear to be comments from an American intelligence analyst who closely supervised the strike from a coalition command center in Riyadh, suggesting that the U.S. military observers actually do have detailed information about how these strikes unfold. But wait a minute, when you ask Mr. Votel, he says, we don't know. We don't know nothing about nothing. I mean, Saudi Arabia, we're just refueling them. That's all. We don't know if our weapons are being used to massacre innocent civilians. We don't know about these strikes. We don't know where they're going, except that you totally know where you're going because we have the intelligence reports that were obtained by The Intercept that posted this. Basically, Votel was caught lying with his pants down to Senator Warren, and now Warren is like, hey, wait a minute. You lied to my face. Now let's get the real truth. Let's get the details about this. So, Warren's letter references the intelligence report posted in The Intercept, asking how U.S. intelligence analysts could have produced such a complete picture of the strike if, as Votel claimed, the Pentagon is doing so little to tracking the missions. Quote, she wrote, this report appeared to indicate that one or more U.S. representatives were present in the Saudi Command Center at the time the strike was approved and executed. The reported presence of U.S. advisors in a command center responsible for actively approving and directing such airstrikes, and the reported existence of at least one U.S. intelligence assessment of an airstrike acknowledging the use of U.S. manufactured munitions raised questions about whether the U.S. does in fact have the capability to track the origins, purpose, and results of U.S. supported airstrikes should it choose to do so. Fascinating. Now, Warren's letter also contains a list of detailed questions about U.S. oversight of Saudi bombings, asking about the role of U.S. advisors in the targeting process, and whether U.S. military officers are present in coalition command centers, overseeing operations. The letter also asks whether the Pentagon conducts after-action assessments or intelligence reports summarizing coalition airstrikes in Yemen, such as the one reported by The Intercept. The letter asks the Defense Department to provide unclassified answers to the extent possible and request copies of those intelligence reports. So this is big, right? Now, it's not getting reported a lot in the media, but here you have a sitting U.S. senator who's been basically lied to, saying, no, wait a minute, you lied to us earlier. Why don't you actually give us the details, right? Because I want to know what we're doing there. How much do we know what is actually going on? What are you not telling us? And again, she's a member of Congress. You would think she would actually know. But it turns out Congress doesn't even know what the military is doing on our behalf and what kind of knowledge we have on Saudi-led bombings that we are actively supporting with munitions and refueling. We're involved in that civil war. And our weapons have been found being used in that area against civilian targets. Let me give you some details here on that. The Intercept notes that since the beginning of the war, U.S.-backed airstrikes have hit countless civilian targets, including schools, hospitals, and food and water infrastructure. Last week, the U.S.-backed coalition bombed a school bus in North Yemen, reportedly killing dozens of boys between the ages of 6 and 11. You know what the response to that was? UNICEF called the strike the worst attack on children since Yemen's brutal war escalated in 2015. The UN, the Secretary General, called for a, quote, independent and prompt investigation into the strike. So, look, man, not only have our weapons been hitting civilian targets in Yemen, the effect of this war that we are de facto supporting Saudi Arabia in perpetrating against the Yemeni people, against the Houthi rebels, right? We have millions of people, innocent civilians in Yemen, that are starving to death. It is a humanitarian disaster that's going on right now. And here you have members of the government, right? Mr. Votel, who was saying, and again, this is General Joseph Votel, head of U.S. Central Command. It's a government official saying, I don't know. I don't know. Look, we just refuel them. That's all we want. That's all we do. I mean, I guess some of our weapons end up being used against civilians, but I'm sure it was an accident. Sure, yeah, of course, right? Now, here's the thing. Now, on the media angle of it, and I mentioned that you don't hear a lot of it on the media. Do you hear stuff like this on Fox News? No. You know, the famine that's going on in Yemen is actually worse than what's going on in Venezuela. And again, Fox News talks about Venezuela 24/7. Oh, they've lost 23 pounds. They're eating rats. Well, here you have millions of people in Yemen that are dying from lack of food. It is worse in Yemen. Do you hear Fox News talking about that? No. You hear other media outlets really talking about that? No. MSNBC, do they talk about it? I think once in a great while they'll do a story on Yemen. Once in a great while. You don't hear about it anywhere except for independent media, places like The Intercept. And now you have Congress that's getting involved. And look, let me go in here and give another Democrat credit here. So now Warren has joined up with Robert Menendez, Senator Robert Menendez. Now, Menendez is actually holding up a multi-billion-dollar arms deal to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates until the Trump administration answers his questions about civilian casualties and what our actual strategy is in this war. That, again, is devastating, that we shouldn't be in at all. Now, Menendez wrote in a letter to Defense Secretary James Mattis and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, quote, "I am concerned that our policies are enabling perpetuation of a conflict that has resulted in the world's worst humanitarian crisis." Well, you should be worried. Because that's exactly what we're doing. We are helping this humanitarian crisis. We are helping a brutal regime in Saudi Arabia crush people in Yemen because the Houthi rebels had the audacity to overthrow a Saudi a king that favors Saudi Arabia. Oh, how dare we do that? We're going to go and bomb Yemen for that. It's disastrous, man. We shouldn't be involved in this at all. This war is an atrocity, and it should not continue. It should not stand. We certainly should not be helping them by exporting weapons. And yet, unfortunately, weapons seem to be our biggest export aside from our own disastrous wars. So that's why I actually do got to give big credit to both Senator Menendez and Senator Warren. I mean, look, you have the defense industry that's actually a gigantic donor. It's a top donor to both. Look, both Republicans and Democrats take defense contractor money. And so here you have Democrats that are actually, even though the donations are on the line, I don't know if Elizabeth Warren takes donations from, from these defense contractors, but it's possible Menendez does. And nonetheless, these are two of the Democrats that actually stand out and say, hey, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. Maybe this is a bad idea. So at least we're questioning now what our role is. It is too late. I mean, it's very late to start questioning, but at the same time, at least they're starting to question what's going on there and maybe eventually putting a stop to it. And we can do so by not actually selling arms, selling weapons to all these different countries. I know the defense contractors are like, no, how are we going to make a profit if we're not selling weapons to brutal regimes in the Middle East? Well, look, that's a bigger issue. That involves getting money out of politics, and so that's a long fight ahead of us when it comes to taking that on. But at least the first step starts with trying to question what our intelligence knows, what our generals know, what our military is doing, and why. Okay. That's it, guys. That's all I got for you guys today. I think it was a pretty good show, so thank you guys for tuning in for that. Thank you guys for the super chats. By the way, Platypi says, Yemen is on some nice oil reserves. That petrodollar. Yeah, I was going to mention that. I did not mention that, and I probably should have. But thank you for pointing that out, Platypi, and thank you for your super chat, which goes to support the show. So, that's it. Now, here's what we're going to do. We will not be back on Monday, but we'll be here on Tuesday. And then I will let you guys know when we'll, when we'll have to take another day off for more bug spraying. So, unfortunately, we still have that problem. But at least I was able to set something up where I can easily take it down and put it back up. So, that works out that way. So, we'll let you know what's going on next week. That said, thank you for watching the show. If you haven't already, please give us a like. Make sure to, of course, share our clips. We're going to have them up later today, starting at about 5 o'clock. So if you haven't already, if you missed the show, you can see clips being up tonight. So we're going to put those up for you guys. All right. That said, have an awesome weekend. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation. We'll see you guys on Tuesday.